Welcome to the Energized podcast. Anna Runkle, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I am so happy to have you as a child or an adult now with childhood trauma and complex PTSD and an overregulated nervous system and hypervigilance that I am healing in perimenopause. I was really excited to have you on because I am one of millions of women
Yeah.
specifically who are trying to parent themselves while they are parenting children. And so I am so excited to have you. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I'm assuming that you hear a lot of that, probably when people are interviewing you or just your community on YouTube.
It's true. Even I go to the grocery store and people will say, "What do you do?" And I say, "Oh, I'm a YouTuber." "What do you teach?" "I teach how to heal you the symptoms of childhood trauma." And they go, "Oh, I need that."
Totally. I know.
Yeah.
I feel the same way when it comes to perimenopause and menopause.
It makes it worse, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. The data's coming, I think.
Oh, yeah. The data is absolutely coming. Yeah. I mean, you have those hormones that are kind of just keeping it all together. And when they start to falter, it all comes up for review.
Yeah.
I feel like that's when women really begin to, get to address all of that if they haven't done so yet. Talk to me a little bit about deregulation and, what are some of I think so often we don't realize we're even deregulated. We're just overachieving or we are keeping busy. We have long-standing checklists. And so I don't think even people know what it feels like to be in a hypervigilant, maybe high functioning system. Maybe they think that they're just doing what society wants of them.
Well, yeah, it's, one flavor of nervous system dysregulation is overfunctioning.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even know the word for that until about 2 years ago. I love it when I learn a word for something that I've been doing all my life. I'm like, it's a thing? I didn't know. But overfunctioning, some people, most of us will swing back and forth a little bit, where if you're an overfunctioner, then sometimes you just totally max out and you're just like, I can't do another thing. I can't move. Everyone, you're just going to have to deal with it. And then we slip into the underfunctioning mode. And often those of us who tend towards overfunctioning, maybe we were the oldest daughter in a dysfunctional family, we're used to trying to take matters into our own hands and make sure like the family's looking good, everybody's got lunch, just taking care of things. It was necessary at one time, but it does become a habit that can be exhausting. And then it can lead to the swing, to the flip to the other side of underfunctioning. And those are the states where you can't get off the sofa. You can barely put your thoughts together. You're procrastinating. And so often they're like two sides of the same coin, a dysregulated nervous system. There's so many ways that it shows up.
Yeah, I was going to say, what are some of the other flavors? And I'm curious as we get into that as well. I'm really interested in how you got into this work too.
Well, it sure wasn't where I knew my life was going. I grew up in a commune. When I was 7, my parents got divorced and my mom turned our house into a commune. And we lived in Berkeley, and this was in like 1970. And some people have happy associations with that concept of a commune, of like chickens and peace and love. But ours was more like grown-ups finding an excuse not to have to deal with any of their responsibilities and to drink and use drugs and, have partners galore and have no structure at all in the house. So our house just went to total chaos when that happened. And my mom's alcoholism and addictions got more severe over the years. So we grew up in pretty much how you would expect when in families like that, where that's going on, as there was violence, there was a lot of neglect. We didn't always have food. We didn't have anyone to like pay attention to, are we keeping up with school? Are we going to school? So I was a good kid. I always went to school. I was over functioning as a kid to make it to look really good. And interestingly, you couldn't do this now, but I have a sister 6 years younger. I was able to convince my 3rd grade teachers to let me bring her to school with me, like long term, because there was nobody to take care of her at home. I think nowadays, they take kids away when there's that much neglect. So it's not what I would have wanted when I was a kid, but I learned early on how to create workarounds, how to get life to work for me, even though we didn't have a lot of the structures. And that, like so many other people with trauma, I learned to, kind of wear a mask, didn't want people to know how bad things were at home, and to be very nice and agreeable and helpful and get good grades, which I'm glad. If you're going to have If you're going to have trauma symptoms, at least getting good grades isn't going to have long-term harm. It's just the
Yeah, it's a
feeling.
good adaptation.
Yeah,
Great
it's a
adaptation.
better one. But, I ended up with like chronic fatigue and migraines and all the sort of trauma symptoms that go along with overfunctioning too.
Mm.
So that all of it has to be healed, all of it.
Yeah, I'm curious when, just even from my own personal, I didn't grow up in a commune, but lots of neglect and lots of abuse and straight A student as a result, and lots of migraines and lots of burnout. Like I had perimenopause and menopause symptoms. These are what my patients were dealing with in my late 20s, early 30s. I had the same symptoms as women in their late 40s, early 50s. And I was like, oh goodness, like I really got to clean this up, if I'm going to be able to function later on in life. And so I was curious for you, when you start that early over functioning and adapting to survive, how soon did you start to notice some of those symptoms come in?
I remember when I was in college, I was constantly in agony. My guts were in knots all the time. And it was kind of exciting. The upside of that time for me is after a chaotic childhood when I never really knew what was going on in school, I was a smart kid. When in college, I learned how to like follow a schedule and a calendar and get A's and write good papers. I just got really into doing well at college. And I don't regret that. Some strengths showed up in me when I had the structure of being in college. Now, college for me, it took a long time. My parents didn't prepare me for it. I had no idea how to go, even though I was a smart kid. I graduated a year early from high school. So the first year, I just walked over to the university that was near us. I was like, I'm ready to start going now. And they were like, did you apply? And I'm like, no, what is that? I didn't know any of this stuff. I was kind of feral. So it took me 6 years to get through school. Plus, I had to work my way through, slinging pizzas and ice cream. And I was a home health aide. And so I got myself through. But by the time it was done, I remember, like, I'm 5'6". I was 107 pounds. My stomach was so like messed up all the time, which we now know. I know now, like, that's such a common way for a young person to manifest trauma. But I just had constant stomach problems. I smoked 2 packs a day. I drank coffee all day. And I was very stressed all the time. And I
Mm.
didn't have health insurance, but I remember when I did it land in a doctor, like I had a broken finger once, and they were like, you seem very stressed out. I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like so stressed out. And that was just my mode. That was my MO of how I pushed through it. And I was able to go a certain distance with that. It was when I was 30 that all of that just started to like not work for me anymore. It just
Mm.
pushing, trying to be the best girl. I wasn't even the best at everything. I was okay. I had my skills. I had a job. But when I was 30, I got attacked on the street. Like I got undone. I was walking with a male friend. It was nighttime, but it was just like a big, busy street. We had just gotten a cup of coffee, and this like gang, these guys just jumped out of nowhere and beat us unconscious and
Oh.
broke my jaw and my teeth. And as a result, I would have to self-diagnose because they didn't diagnose me at the time, but I think I had PTSD. I was pretty messed up. I couldn't put my thoughts together. I was crying all the time. I was supposed to take time off from work because of the head injury, but my work wouldn't give it to me. So I went to work and I was just acting very inappropriate and angry, going into rages. I had PTSD. So it's hard to believe that in 1994, like they still thought of that as something that only soldiers got. But I think it's really common for traumatized people. Like you can compartmentalize it. You can do your sort of look good thing that holds it together. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you just try to keep your life as together as you could? But when that adult trauma hit me, I couldn't hold it together anymore. And I was a wreck. And I went into a pretty bad depression and I couldn't get out of it. I was in therapy all the time, but I was just going down. That's kind of what caused me to have to figure out something.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, it's, you only have, even with all of the kind of early trauma, we only have so much resilience, right? And then you kind of have this tipping point. I think for all of us, it can be so different what that tipping point is. And obviously, being brutally attacked on a street by strangers is enough to kind of spiral.
Yeah, it really it disrupted me neurologically. And, I'm not a brain scientist. I'm not even a therapist, but I've lived the experience of like, I was kind of holding it together and then I couldn't, and what that was like and the symptoms that I had. And I lived for 20 years before the book, Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score came out. That was the first time I ever heard of the thing complex PTSD. And I'd been in therapy many of those years, but that was never mentioned. I think what people understood that I was like an adult child of an alcoholic, which is certainly true, but it never explained, like, why do I have chronic fatigue, or why am I having trouble moving my hands, and how come I go numb sometimes when I'm getting my hair cut? I can't feel my body. All these weird symptoms that I had, which we now know it's neurological dysregulation. It's really normal. Everybody gets dysregulated sometimes, but those of us who are traumatized as kids are often more prone to it. It happens more easily. It's more intense. It's harder to get out of. So later, when I figured out something that helped me, this is what I figured out. If you can learn how to re-regulate and stay regulated more of the time, most of your problem is solved. Because once you're regulated, you actually have a level of, like, you're attuned enough to reality, to other people, to yourself, that you can actually start solving problems in your life. When you're dysregulated, it's like so much noise coming at you all the time. It's as if you have headphones on and it's just like blaring this loud music in your ears while you're pretending to be like everybody else and go, oh yes, of course I heard what you just said. You can't really hear anything. So it's really hard. I had a lot of problems. I would just choose the worst men for relationships with, and I had no insight about why that would keep happening. That's the sort of thing that's normal for a person who's like in the middle of trauma symptoms. You can't get insight. Your brain is just completely hijacked it's dysregulated. So you don't have that like fine functioning in your left front cortex where reasoning is to sort of go, maybe this is happening because I didn't see the red flags. Maybe the red flag was da, da, da. Like I just couldn't seem to learn anything and I would repeat the same mistakes. And then at that time, the therapist was like, well, you're just trying to recreate your childhood so that this time you could win. And I would think, yeah, I see your narrative there, but I just don't think so. I don't think that's what I'm doing. I don't know why it's happening, but I don't think it's intentional. And so as the science came out, we go, oh, the left front cortex, like just can't function well under stress in somebody who was neglected as a kid. That's the pattern. Okay, that makes sense.
We just didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah. Can you really quickly, I want to scoot back. I want to get into the regulation piece as well and talk about how we can regulate. Because I think it's a daily event. For example, like I was recently diagnosed with complex PTSD. And I just knew I had a very hypervigilant, hyperproductive, high achieving way of operating in the world. And it's grateful for the superpowers, very similar to you, just like grateful for the superpowers and, at times burning out as a result.
Yeah.
And so trying to put the pieces together of kind of what's going on with the brain. And then what does it look like if you're more susceptible to stressors kind of tipping you over versus somebody who hasn't had that level of trauma? Like, how do you manage that on a day-to-day? I always say that I have to be very intentional to not fall into what I consider my brain considers to be safety places, like things that most people that aren't safe, my brain's like, oh, but we know this. This is what you've been doing. You do this all the time. It's fine. It's like the devil.
I can work with this. I'm good at this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so what is the difference between complex PTSD and actual PTSD? Like, because I think everyone, when they think about PTSD, it's like this one big major event versus complex, it's over time. It's like developmental.
Yeah, complex, it's intense stress that has come over a period of time, like chronic, ongoing, sometimes unrelenting. And there's something about that. There's an extra layer to it, though. When it happens, complex PTSD could happen anytime in life if you had been going through something really horrible, an abusive marriage, a war, just on and on every day. But most often it happens during childhood. And in childhood, you also have this extra dimension of your brain and your nervous system are still forming. So you end up with, it's called developmental trauma. It may be causing like a delay in development or actually like stopping the development of something that was supposed to happen in its proper time because you didn't have enough attention, protein. It's hard to say. We don't have perfect measurements of it. But serious neglect can cause these developmental problems, and especially around emotional regulation, being able to pay attention. And then a lot of physiological functions too. We know that early trauma is very strongly correlated later in life with high rates of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune disorders, reproductive disorders, just about everything bad. And probably the mechanism, I think the research is still very much in progress, but the mechanism seems to be neurological dysregulation.
Yeah.
And that's, what is that? So when people are like, well, how do you know that's happening? It has a few signs that are very out. The one that other people can feel is you get emotionally dysregulated. just very like emotional and lashing out, overreacting to things. Some people feel annoyed when I use the word overreaction, but that's literally what I'm talking about. There's sort of like a range of like the right way to feel about something that somebody like bumps into you on the street. If you fly into a rage about it, I would call that an overreaction. It's fair to say. So that would be emotional dysregulation, where a person's nervous system can't really simultaneously, process reason and go, it was an accident. They were just walking the other way. They said sorry. Maybe that can't get processed. This emotional thing is just like going all the way to the moon. And so out comes this behavior that's very destructive to our relationships and also our opportunities. Like if you do that at work, you're not going to go far if your temper is out of control. And so that's emotional dysregulation. But there are so many other things in dysregulation. Sometimes you can't feel your hands, your breathing and heart rate become irregular. And that may seem like a small matter, but over time, that actually that can be like a portal where disease gets in, this like lack of synchronization of your body rhythms. People have sleep problems. That's regulation too. Like your circadian rhythm is part of your nervous system regulation. When you go into puberty and when you go into menopause, that's part of your nervous system regulation. And those things can be very disrupted by trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Girls who have been sexually abused, I've read this, that they go into puberty an average of 2 years earlier than their peers who were not sexually abused. Wow, that's very significant. That's a lot going on in your body that isn't under your control as a result of some disruption. It gives me so many things to think about like how important it is that the connections that we're meant to have in families and as children, not to idealize and make it like perfect mom stuff, but just that connection is so important for your brain to develop. And I remember having my own kids feeling like, how you joke, you go that the first 3 months of the baby's life is like the fourth trimester. And it's like that. But there's like so much to that. I feel like a lot of my own neurological development advanced quite a lot after I had kids. And I was involved in a mother-baby love bond, just that healing of being connected together like that I hadn't gotten fully from my own mom, that I was able to experience as the mom. I think I was able to make progress then, but I was also quite challenged by it sometimes.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I agree. I hear that 100%. And yeah, I agree. The research is still coming through. And we know that when we are deregulating our nervous system, it's affecting our hormones. When we think about norepinephrine and epinephrine and cortisol and dopamine and serotonin, and if you think about just cortisol alone being a survival hormone, it's going to drive oxidative stress and inflammation. It's going to deregulate our blood glucose and our insulin level.
Yes,
but it's all just yeah. So it all is never surprising that, that it has this big compounding physiological event in terms of how it affects the body. It also affects our immune system as well. So many of my patients are diagnosed with autoimmune conditions, including myself, and we can really connect one of the root causes to trauma earlier in life.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I have Graves' disease and I have vitiligo.
Yeah, exactly.
Luckily, those are two things I can live with pretty easily. But
yeah, I hear you. I have Haji's. I have the opposite of Graves. So I hear you on that. And yeah, it's very rare that we only just have one autoimmunity, especially when you have a whole system that has been, kind of on edge, in survival mode for so long.
Yeah. But I mean, I bet you have this too. You just think, oh gosh, I've been put on notice. It's so important that I have peace inside my body so that I can do my best and give myself the best chance. My health has improved so much since I learned how to re-regulate my nervous system. I mean, I didn't know that a lot of my health problems, I used to have asthma. I used to have chronic back pain. I had knee pain. They said I'd never run again. What else? I had migraines. And that stuff every once in a blue moon, I'll get a migraine. That's kind of evolved with hormones. It might be because of menopause that's easier for me now, but so many health problems have cleared up, and all the stomach problems I used to have, I'm good now. But when I do get stressed out, that's usually where I take it. And that was one of the most traumatic times in my life was I had to have 14 major surgeries after childbirth. And I can tell you now, I think that I was supposed to heal after every single one of them. The chances were excellent that I would heal, but I kept not healing. And I was just going through so much stress at the time. My trauma was so activated. I didn't have support. I had 2 kids at home. My husband had left. It was this very hard time. And a doctor based in Panama who I'm friends with, who's really, really knowledgeable about trauma, I said, well, then I miraculously recovered when I returned to my techniques. And I recovered. I wasn't supposed to ever recover. I was supposed to have all these like medical appliances. It's a long story, but one thing snowballed into like 100 things and nothing was working. And I was surviving, but I was having like intestinal blockages and blood infections, septic infections all the time and bleeding out. I multiple times had serious hemorrhages. So I was in the emergency room all the time. I was surviving, but barely. It was a very tough situation. I recovered when I got back to the techniques that I didn't know. I didn't know that what was wrong was dysregulation. I was using my techniques for years, just knowing they made me feel better. And I had abandoned them. When my life got hard and my husband left, I was just like, see, nothing works. I'm not going to do any of these techniques or anything. I don't care anymore. But I came back to them and my body settled down again. They helped me to settle my body down and then things could work. So what this doctor, her name is Dr. Susana De Leon, just for the record. But I said, I had this miracle healing. And she goes, yeah, you did. And I said, but was it a miracle? And she said, well, it's really a miracle that you were able to heal enough that your body could start functioning again, but probably what was suppressing its natural response. Because to heal from surgery and all this tissue they were stitching together all the time, you have to have adequate blood flow. Your body has to have good, immune function and blood flow. And all that stuff was compromised because I was under such extreme stress for years straight. And ironically, all that surgery was even more stress, of course.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a physical stressor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I was at the edge. And so then I just had a quiet period where I was able to use my techniques. I just wanted to feel better. I just was trying to get my life back together. I had given up. I had accepted that this medical problem was never going to heal. But then it did. And then it did heal. And so, you just really never know what your body's capable of until you give it a chance by learning to re-regulate. You give it its best chance. And I always tell people, but that doesn't mean we're going to live forever. Part of our life cycle is we'll age, we'll die, and that's part of it. But, so many of us with trauma, we were doing those things kind of early. Those processes were already underway, basically, while the trauma had a control over us, over the nervous system.
I want to go into regulation because I think a lot of people, kind of similar to you, probably are thinking, oh gosh, it doesn't work. It's not working. And have in your experience, with, having people who connect with you and not only your own personal experience, but what people have shared, what are some of the ways that you've seen, what are some of the best ways that we can start to regulate, especially if someone is deregulated? Where's a good place to start?
Well, if you could only do one thing, I would say move your body.
Yeah.
The number one thing to do is to move your body. And the funny thing about when you're throttled with trauma symptoms, it'll often put you in freeze mode and you're not moving. And you can often disrupt that. You can just sort of loosen that up, break the ice, just go outside and move around outside. If you're really having a good day, see if you can go to a class where other people, you're all doing the same thing in yoga or dance or martial arts. But a lot of what feeling dysregulated does is it makes it very difficult to deal with people. If people feel like too much. And so one of the least talked about trauma symptoms, but it's almost universal, is that we start isolating. We isolate to try to manage the dysregulation. If I'm alone, I can pretty much keep it under control. But if I'm at a party, all this stuff is triggery for me. People are in cliques and they don't like me there and I don't like how I look. And, should I eat cake in front of everybody? Or you can start really tripping about everything. It's a trigger. And when I say trigger, I mean it triggers dysregulation. Mm-hmm. And so that sense of disconnection from people is so limiting in life. It'd be very hard to meet good friends, to have a good job, if all the time you have to limit what you can do so that you're not getting overwhelmed by the situation. And when I named this symptom, so many people talk back to, I have this YouTube channel and people talk to me all day long about what they think about what I just said. And this is so common out there that people cannot really connect. And you do it so long that you don't even know you're doing it. So we get dysregulated, and because of dysregulation, we're disconnecting. And once we're isolated all the time, it's really easy to slip into self-defeating behaviors. And I think those three things, dysregulation, disconnection, self-defeating behavior, those are the things that can just take you out and keep you stuck in trauma forever. So the good news is you can learn to re-regulate. And sometimes you can skip around to those three things. Whatever is like your low-hanging fruit to work on will help you with the other two. So if for you, somebody might be trying to re-regulate by getting outraged at the news every morning. They just like get in there and read stuff and they go, oh, wow, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. And they get all dysregulated and everything feels bad. So the self-defeating behavior in that case is exposing yourself to super negative stuff that's basically drugging you with anger. And anger is delicious when you're depressed. It's like energy. It's got an energy to it. It gets you up off the floor, but it's a bad place to get stuck. So if you can just change this one behavior, like I'm just going to wait until noon before I even look online at that sort of thing, then you've done one thing that you might find helps you get a little more re-regulated. And when you're a little more re-regulated, your body's humming, you're feeling hungry at the right time, full when it's appropriate, you're feeling sleepy when it's time to sleep. Your emotions are, in the range of like, yeah, and you're not losing control of your ability to focus. Like those would be some signs that you're regulated. So if you're just a little bit more in that direction, you can focus a little better. Now you can take a step to connect with somebody a little bit more. So I really recommend to people, they go slowly to try to start coming out of this trap, this like dysregulation trap. Come out slowly, a little at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. That's basically what you're trying to avoid in all the bad things that are happening is the overwhelm. It just gets overwhelming. I think you and I as overfunctioners, that's a lot how we deal with overwhelm. It feels like really chaotic. And that is one rational thing to do is like, well, get it into order, get your ducks in a row right now.
Yeah.
And then it'll feel better. And on the one hand, that's true, but obviously it can go too far.
Yeah. I love that movement. Movement is definitely my number one thing.
Yeah.
I always think, obviously there's a lot of techniques out there like EMDR and internal family systems and somatic work that you can do and hiring people that can help you move through it. And I've hired a lot of those people. And yet I still find things that are coming up. And so it's the everyday things that I find really help to move the needle that save me.
Yeah. My go-to is it's a writing technique. It's not journaling. It's a way to get the fearful and resentful thoughts onto paper, to name them and then release them. Or for people who are sort of oriented toward a higher power, you can ask for them to be removed. And then I follow it with meditation. And this was the thing that totally changed everything for me. When I had overwhelming PTSD, somebody showed me how to do this and I started to recover very quickly. The part that was slow was all the like life problems, stuff with men, money, friends, jobs.
Yeah.
But my basic neurology came together when I learned how to do that. So that's my go-to technique, and I've taught it to a lot of people. I'll give you a link. I have a free course.
Oh, perfect.
And then I teach the technique also in my book, both books. I have my book.
Connectability.
I have
that one
Re-regulated from last year and Connectability from this year.
I love it. I love it. I know that there's so much that we can get into and in terms of regulating, and I want people to be able to go and just find you and go and check out the book. I know the new book is Connectability, but you've got the other one as well. And your YouTube channel is huge. Obviously there's so many people out there that are going through this too, just trying to find their way through it. Yeah. Is there anywhere else, Anna, that you would love us to plug into you?
Well, you can find me. My website has the same name as my YouTube channel, Crappy Childhood Fairy. And there you can find the free courses and some free tools as well as paid courses and a membership program you can take part in if you want to do this in a community. So my whole life has sort of grown up around me to help other people walk the path I have to start learning how to manage and heal when possible the symptoms, the effects they've been left with from childhood trauma, whether or not they have access to professional help.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I agree. Sometimes even with the professional help, I have amazing friends of mine and colleagues that are trauma based. Like one of my dear friends is Dr. Amy, who's got the biology of trauma coming out. And so, yes, but not everyone's got access to that. And it doesn't always move the needle in the most meaningful way. Yeah. So I think, having these tools and resources, figuring out what's going to work for you is the through line. Yeah. And I know if everyone can be a little bit different. I get that some of the tools are consistent and the research is to back it up, but you kind of got to find your own way.
Yeah. Each person some people are much more body people, they respond very strongly to that. EMDR worked like a charm for me. And then writing, getting my thoughts on paper is super helpful for me. I've been doing it so long now that the minute I'm writing anything, I could just be writing a grocery list and I start to relax.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the brain's like, ooh, safety signal. We know this.
Yeah. Yeah. We're letting it out now. We're not going to hold it all in.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Anna, honey, it's been such a pleasure to have you on.
you.
And I'm so excited. Thank you so much for sharing your story and
Thank you.
opening the door for what is possible for us and healing our hearts, healing our soul. And that, it's our legacy too, to be regulated for, ideally for ourselves, but also for our family.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are ready to learn more about perimenopause and how to navigate with a lot of ease and grace, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can join our community. Don't forget to share this video with someone that you love, that you know is navigating the perimenopause journey as well, because they deserve to feel their best too. See you in the next video.